What's up, guys? Coach Gaglione here. There's another edition of the Powerlifting the People podcast. I'm your host, Coach Gaglione, and I've been involved with powerlifting and strength coaching for over 19 years. Did my first meet back in 2006, and here we are. So at this time, basically, like I said, I've been competing and coaching for that time. I started out coaching mostly athletes, and then in 2011, founded Gaglione Strength, opened up my company. I joked that I started doing powerlifting before it was cool, and back then, a lot of people don't know this, but powerlifting was not really, there was really no raw category. The raw category didn't come until a few years later. I think maybe 2012 was the first time they kind of instituted kind of classic worlds on the tested side, and that's kind of exploded since then. I do think people like Mark Bell, Dan Green, Stan Efferding, they really kind of helped kind of pave the way, especially Dan Green, especially when he also started to kind of host a lot of those events, Boss of Bosses. And before that, we had a contest called Raw Unity. And I really loved the spirit of Raw Unity because it kind of brought lifters from all different federations. You had tested lifters, untested lifters, people from the South, the North, the West, the East. Pretty amazing stuff. I believe, you had people like, John Hack kind of got their start there. Larry Wheels he actually bombed out because due to like a little bit of a tweak in his body. Obviously, you had, people like Dan Green, and I want to say, a lot of great lifters. I'm kind of drawing a blank here. Mike Teixeira. I think even some like tested lifters kind of did the Raw Unity at a certain point. Because even a lot of people don't know, like Mike Teixeira, like kind of got his start in single ply lifting, and he's been like a really popular resource for especially a lot of tested lifters. Yeah. So, anyways, just a little background and history. For me, I was always interested in powerlifting. Was always about lifting the most amount of weight humanly possible. And as far as where I grew up in the air, there was a lot of lifters called East End Barbell. You had people like John Benor. He had a 2,600 pound total, single ply, I believe. Just going off memory here. You had people like Chris Taylor. He had elite multiple weight classes. I seen him do like 900 pounds to a one board. That's kind of just the guys that I would kind of grew up with, and a lot of my former one of my early mentors, Will Ellinger, was a former powerlifter. He kind of shared a lot of Powerlifting USA articles, some like Westside Barbell. He had some influences from Dr. Ken Leisner. There was Iron Island in Oceanside, New York. So there's a lot of like influence as far as powerlifting in the kind of like the Long Island area. And a lot of those people had kind of ties to like Westside Barbell, Louis Simmons. And that was kind of the prominent kind of like training information at the time. And I think, I had Westside Barbell VHS tapes kind of shortly after kind of learned a lot from Elite FTS, T Nation, and all these different sites, Dave Tate, Jim Wundler. Eventually I got to meet Mark Bell. Again, I knew Mark Bell before he was rich and famous. Jesse Burdick was a mentor. Rubbed elbows with Matt Wenning quite a few times, purchased some of his equipment. The list goes on and on, but a lot of like my early influences early on, and even people like Eric Cressy and stuff, Jordan Syatt, which are kind of more in like, Eric Cressy and Tony Gentilcore in like more of the strength and conditioning world. And, Jordan Syatt's more on like the fitness side of things. A lot of these people kind of had ties to Westside Barbell in some capacity, some more than others. And even myself, I first visited Westside, I believe, in either 2010 or 2011. And Louis was very gracious with his time then. And in 2017, I spent a full week there, which again may not seem like a lot of time, but I was there morning and night. I was there for the AM crew, the PM crew. I went to Bob Evans. Louis Simmons took me out a few times to eat. He always picked up the tab. And these are just like little things. Like I said, everyone's different, like with their financial situation, whatever. But even toward the latter, that was kind of some of Louis' final years of his life, and I was really grateful to get a chance to get to know him a little bit more personally, one-on-one. Again, not to the level like that, like a Dave Tate. Obviously, spent there. A lot of those, people like spent years and years and years training under a system. But again, I bought all the VHS tapes. I read all the articles. I went to all the seminars that I could from like a lot of his like kind of disciples, if you will. And I got to spend a week with Louis, like I said, and one of the things I want to really important story that I think this will kind of set the tone for the podcast today, because I want to start off with something positive, end with something positive, and not just make this negative. One of the things I was really taken back with, we were working with this, and a lot of people don't know with Westside Barbell, they're kind of known for training equipped power lifters, but also worked with a lot of athletes, a lot of high level athletes. And I believe this girl actually ended up transitioning to powerlifting, but that's neither here nor there. But anyways, this girl was training for U.S. bobsled team. She was doing some deficit deadlifts, and then we were kind of moving on to posterior chain work, some back extensions. And I remember Louis, he's analyzing the form and all this stuff. And I don't even remember like what corrections we made or if any, but basically he kind of like looked over at me and he's like, what do you think of this? What do you think of like how she's executing this? And again, I'm paraphrasing, but I was just really, so like he was like, again, I was kind of going there to learn from him. And he was kind of asking what I thought. And I still had a lot of experience at the time, but again, like I was just kind of really taken back. And that's what I'm saying. Louis, to like, again, into the latter years of his life, he was always tinkering, he was always experimenting, always trying to learn, always trying to improve. And again, I think more than anything, like he's always was trying to innovate. If you think of things like all the specialty bars, bands and chains, the idea of calming resistance, you see that in sports teams, you see that in bodybuilding. It's funny, you see it less in powerlifting now, but it's still very prominent in equipped powerlifting, and for good reason. And you'll see like some of the more like the more older and beat up that you are, you'll start to see more of these people kind of gravitate towards some of these methods. And I kind of mentioned before in several podcasts, like in 2023, I ended up re-aggravating my shoulder injury. Something kind of popped in there. I wasn't able to squat with a straight bar, bench press, or deadlift for a period of time during a meet prep. And because of my knowledge of the Westside Barbell system and special exercises and max effort work, I was able to do a lot of suspended mornings and other exercises and general exercises. I was able to maintain my strength. I was able to maintain, again, I deadlifted 701 pounds that year. I was able to maintain a 665 deadlift going into the meet. And then I was right around a 600-pound equipped bench press, and I was able to maintain a 585 bench press, and again, just at the meet. And that was with a weight cut. So that was really good. Again, didn't hit my goal. I was looking for a 10 times body weight. But and that ship maybe has sailed, maybe not, but we'll kind of see like as I get leaner, lighter, and healthier again. But I'm okay with what I've accomplished. I've done a 2,100-pound total. I've done a five elite totals in 5 different weight classes. And I believe that Louis did that as well. I'll bet with, again, we have a little bit more advanced technology with gear. So what he did was certainly more impressive. And again, Louis was never like the best lifter, but he was in the top of his age group in the pack for quite some time. And I just, like I said, always wanted to kind of honor him. And that was kind of where, that was kind of the one reason why I wanted to get my 5th elite. I never got elite at super heavyweight, but I've been elite in 198 to 308. I've also first and only known man to squat 800 pounds in 6 different weight classes. And I believe that has helped me become a better coach because I understand different body types, different leverages, weight cut, non-weight cut, being fat, being leaner. I kind of understand the gamut of all that. So, and I've dabbled in some raw lifting as well. But anyways, one of the things that's been really challenging, and as powerlifting has grown, there's more people to manage, there's more personalities, there's more people that some people do things for contribution and growth. I learned this from Tony Robbins, motivational speaker and kind of business guru and all these things. So we all have basic human needs, and some people a lot of people, and I've been here as well. I am like super comfortable with what I've done, and to the point where sometimes I need to like remind people that I've squatted a grand in training. I need to remind people that I've trained multiple all-time record holders. I need to remind people I've trained over 100 nationally ranked powerlifters, top 50 in their weight class and division, American records in the USAPL. The list goes on and on. I don't usually reiterate these things all the time because I don't really feel like the need to. I know I'm one of the best strength coaches in the country. I know I'm one of the best powerlifting coaches on the planet. The data speaks for themselves. I'm also just not concerned. I'm kind of like past a little bit my mental prime and all these things. I want to help people get better. And I know that I could help more people if I kind of focus on beginners, focus on masters, lifters. And again, for me, At this point, like the juice is not worth the squeeze anymore. And again, maybe that's going to hurt me as an athlete, but I'm okay with that. I need to be around for my family. I need to be around for our team. I'm 38 years old. I've been competing for almost 20 years at this point, and I'm still learning. I'm still getting better. And I'm also just like having fun with strict curl training and competing right now. Not to say I won't go back to powerlifting, but for right now, it's on the back burner. And I've kind of thought I was kind of done many times, and I've always come back and gotten better. And I've hit an all-time best results, even after weight loss, even after injuries. And a lot I have to owe to the West Side Barbell System and Louis Simmons. So anyways, some people will come, they kind of come from a place of contribution and growth. And that's kind of like where I always try to be. One of my biggest, if I have any regrets, I really wish that my company was not called Gaglione Strength. I wish, because it's not about me. And again, yes, I'd like to be recognized. Yes, it's nice to be, like when Larry Wheels gives me praise for all his all-time records. It feels great when I have people thank me because at the end of the day, the athlete does the thing. Okay. And we'll like it or not, regardless of how good your system is, every athlete has so much potential, and oftentimes we underestimate what we could do in the long term. So I think a lot of people have a lot more potential than they realize. But at the end of the day, like who your parents are has the most, you know, it has a huge effect on the success, your success potential. And I think that again, we have a lot more success potential than we think, but ultimately a lot of people like, again, and now we're getting more and more great athletes getting involved with powerlifting. And you're seeing like, people like Agata Shitko, and many others. She comes like, it's like the people, you're seeing like girls, I think she just deadlifted 4 times body weight on the stiff bar, 2-hour weigh-in, pretty crazy stuff. Right. So, the sport is advancing, and it's not necessarily, I guess, I think the training is better and the programming matters, but it's more about like really good college teams they might not have the best training programs, but they're really good at recruiting. So the more eyeballs that are on the sport, you have things like Sheffield, Money Meets, and again, whatever is popular, people are going to kind of gravitate towards that. But there's some dangers to supporting tested powerlifting, and I know it's maybe a hot take. I think that number one, the barrier to like a lot of the tested federations, not all, like I think 100% raw is great. And I'm not going to like bash anyone, but you guys could like read between the lines. Some of these organizations, to their credit, they're really good businesses. They're really organized. These are all positive things. But when I see like someone like they were like charged, some of these federations were charging like $2,000, $2,500 for a lifetime membership, which means you would have to be loyal and to that federation for 20 to 30 years for you to get a return back on that investment. And that's without taking any years off from competing. Totally not reasonable. Coaches would also have to pay the same fee. I don't think that's reasonable. It's like the barrier, you're starting to raise the barrier to entry, and it's not good for the sport. And people are getting greedy. And again, I want to pay the bills too. Like I said, a lot of times when I run an event or things like, if I'm in the hole sometimes, it's not fun, but I know I'm making an impact, which is why I keep coming back. And it's why I keep moving forward. And it's why I keep trying to improve. I didn't want to open up a second location. I didn't want to take on that extra risk, but I felt a need because the Delaware community needed another strength community, needed someone to guide them, because everyone in Delaware, they don't support local for the most part. They go to Virginia, they go to Maryland, they go to Pennsylvania. They don't support their local gyms. They don't support their local meets. That's a problem. And now we're starting to see in Long Island and in powerlifting across the country, you're seeing a lot more guys and girls that want to have a place of significance. They want to come from they want to be the guy. They want to get that notoriety. They want to get the follower count. They're not necessarily doing what's best for the community. They're not just doing they're not looking out for your best interests. The hoops that we've had to jump through to get Bryn to compete at this next meet, it's been crazy. And, from the fees to, the memberships to, all these different things. And again, I'm just like, I know we kind of joke about this, but again, I think that if you have to like check someone's underwear and all these different things and have all these crazy rules, it's just like we had to buy different belts we had to buy. It gets to be too crazy. They're banning knee sleeves, they're banning this. It's just like, guys, and again, at the highest level, whatever, if you want to make a high standard, great. But for someone that's just trying to do their first meet, like if they can't wear a Velcro belt, if they can't wear this kind of underwear, if they can't wear this singlet, if they can't wear your socks are like a millimeter too short or your elbow sleeves a millimeter too big, what are we doing? So it's really important that when you guys pay for something, you're voting with your dollars. When you guys show up to a meet, you're voting with your dollars. And one of the dangers of supporting tested powerlifting exclusively, a lot of tested powerlifting, number one, there's a high barrier of entry. I had a lifter who, she's no longer with us. She had over 1,000 pound total as a female. She was one of the strongest lifters in the country at the time. I believe that she was top 15 in her division at one time, over 1,000 pound total. She was not granted a therapy. It's called a TUE, a therapeutic use exemption for her inhaler. So if she had an asthma attack at a meeting, she took her inhaler and then she took a P test, she would be banned. Her records would be stripped. And they say, see you later, because she couldn't take her medication. They felt that was an advantage for her to take her inhaler. And I just won't stand for that crap anymore. I just won't. And I won't support federations that do that kind of crap anymore. Even if they're the most organized, even if they're the most popular, even if that hurts me, because I'm going to stand up for what's right. I don't think I've said this on a podcast. I think a man came to me from a very popular organization. They used combo racks. They had big money meets at the time. But Larry Wheels was victim of the combo rack one year. He was squatting 777 for a PR in the 242s. It was the battle of the 242s. Larry Wheels, Andrew Herbert, Kevin Oak, an epic showdown, one of the most anticipated showdowns in powerlifting history. Well, the spotters were fans of Larry. And Larry went a little bit too deep because the standard was too great. It was excessive depth. They wanted crazy depth. They wanted to show those guys, we squat low in this federation. And then Larry went down, went a little bit too deep because the standard was too aggressive, in my opinion. Spotters couldn't grab him. Partially tore his quad. He was out of the meet. Then Andrew Herbert, his tricep exploded. His elbow exploded. Andrew's out on the bench. And then Kevin Oak blows his hamstring off the bone on the deadlift. And then Tony Montgomery wins the 242 title. Biggest flop because it got too strict. Got too strict. The stakes were too high. The pressure got to them. But it could have been avoided. Things like if we had safety straps, Larry would have won that meet with safety straps. He would have won that cash money. He would have upped the 242 all-time record once again. Again, we ended up kind of getting him healthy. He got himself healthy, and then he ended up breaking Stan Efferding's record. Then we kind of really dialed in on remote coaching. And then in 2020, he broke Eric Lillibridge's historic all-time record. He was only like in the 280s, broke the 308 record with a 2370 total at the Arnold, at the XBC finals. Julius Maddox was there. Eddie Hall was there. A bunch of other guys. TD Smash was there. Pretty epic stuff. That was really cool. But we elected to just do monolith meets from now on. For those big records. He did also beat some other meets out of stands here and there just to prove a point, but for all his big records, we kind of made sure that he did federations that were safe, that were going to be in his best interest. And I understand like that some people like maybe want to compete against on a level playing field, but the truth is there is no level playing field. We're all dealt a different hand. We all have different genetics. We all have different limitations, limb lengths. There's a lot of things that are out of our control. But I understand the need for like the tested side of things, but I don't think there's any reason why lifters from different backgrounds can't share the platform. That was one of the things that was really amazing about powerlifting, is that sometimes you heard stories about, they would let the inmates out for the powerlifting meet. You had like the police officers and the criminals, they could share a platform. And this was very common in the 90s and the early 2000s. And that's kind of what made powerlifting special, is that under the bar, everyone was kind of equal. But now, like, people, like, it's just like the type of and again, I'm glad that powerlifting is growing, but the type of person, a lot of these kids, they're very entitled. They want to have like national level bells and whistles and fireworks and the Lion King. I know I'm being like kind of crazy here, but I've literally seen the Lion King being played on a screen at like a meet. It's like, it just gets to be too insane. What happened to just focusing on lifting the weight, going for your personal record, driving for personal growth through powerlifting? Do we need all the smoke screen? Do we need all the lights, the glitz and the glamour? Or like, if you're a JV football player, you don't get the Friday Night Lights game. You don't get the fireworks. You don't get the Dallas Cowboy cheerleading, show, right? That's reserved for the pros. And then you have something to aspire to, because again, if that's like what some like local meet directors are doing, and again, that's fine, it's a business, but I think again, we're hurting the sport if that's the direction we're going. And then is that sustainable at the grassroots? I don't think it's sustainable at the grassroots level. The other thing that really sucks is when meet directors don't want to work with each other. I try to be in touch the best I can, and it's getting increasingly more difficult because now I'm trying to kind of grow the grassroots in 3 different regions. And again, maybe I've bitten off too much more than I can chew, but I really want to help Larry Wheels out in California and One Gen Gym. They got some great people there. Obviously, my new home in Delaware. And then again, Strong Island, Long Island will always have a special place in my heart. We had people like Mark Greenstein become best in the world. He was 5th all time at 198, 1825 at 198. Larry Wheels was homegrown. Larry Wheels was homegrown, 1900 to 2370. 1900 to 2370. That is nothing to sniff at. Dominici, okay, he went from like a 1500 total to like a 2K total under our like guidance, and then he went on to, I don't remember the other guy he switched to, but he went on to squat 900 pounds in just knee sleeves. Dominici was a homegrown guy from Plainedge, New York as well. We had guys like Richie Rizzo. He was getting really close to the world record deadlift in the 165s. He just never decided that he wanted to cut weight, but he pulled, I believe, 690 off blocks. And again, at the time, people were not doing that. People were not, and he still had a mid 600 deadlifts as a very light 181 lifter. The list goes on and on. Gina Versa, again, she ended up hitting an all-time record deadlift shortly after kind of working with us. I was there helping her and Chris Bridgeford at that particular meet. She had like a 1,200-pound total, I believe, under our coaching. As a female, again, still like one of the best totals of all time, regardless of federation. She kind of got in and out, and I respect her for that. So the list goes on and on. And I have some other people in the works that are kind of like, they're chomping at the bit to go for another all-time record. Again, I'm not really focused on those types of people anymore, but I have the skill set. I've been there. I've done that. Our system works for the beginners. It works for 70 years old. It works for 9 years old. It works for all-time record holders. It works for genetic freaks, and it works for people with more average genetics like myself. I think I have above average strength genetics, but I have less than a 20-inch vertical. I have below average athletic genetics based off certain metrics. So one of the dangers of more people, anyone could like kind of run a meet, anyone. And the thing, like for me, it's like, I'm assuming the risk of like opening all these facilities. I'm assuming the risk of kind of like keeping the lights on. A lot of these meet directors just will kind of, they're just meet directors, and that's an advantage for them. A lot less risk. And they don't give a fuck, about like the local gyms. They don't care about the local. They're going to do what kind of suits them and their pocket and their kind of people. And like right now, a lot of these tested federations are really hot. The dangers of only supporting tested federations is that you do have people That might be adaptive athletes. You do have people that may have financial constraints. So like RPS, we don't have a registration fee. For a lot of people, like putting up $200 to do a meet plus hotels, plus travel, all these different things, it might end up being like $1,000 to do a meet if you have to travel. And the issue is, if you only have access to tested meats, number one, the safety is going to be down. The barrier of entry is going to be higher. If you have some people for health ramifications, they might not be able to take their inhalers. They might not be able to, some people medically need testosterone replacement and things like that, especially as you guys get older. You may not be natty anymore. And the TRT is not going to give you necessarily a performance advantage. It's going to bring you back to baseline. It's a medical reason. There's nothing wrong with that. And I understand, and those people still should be put in another category because now it starts to muddy the waters. Okay. But if you only support tested meats, at a certain point, you may be screwing yourself over because you may need to take a banned substance just to be healthy, just to feel normal. What if you're someone who's an equipped lifter? Okay, there's not a lot of, I understand that some of these tested federations have single ply, but not all of them do. What if you want to do multiply? What if you want to use a band shirt? What if you want a strict curl? What if you want to, so if we had to be very careful about where we vote with our dollars. Unfortunately, some of these tested feds have come in. We've had some long-standing meets. We may have a meet that's going to get killed off because some other organizations that they have meets back to back close to ours, and they didn't want to work with us to move them. So our meets might die. Then there's no more monolith meets. If you're on TRT, you can't compete. Sorry. You're not good enough to sit at our table. So this is the problem. So you have to be very careful about who you support. And again, it may not affect you now. It may not affect you now, but it will affect you later. It may affect your training partners. It may affect your friends, your family. If these crews go away, if these powerlifting gyms go away, if these meets that are more accessible and more inclusive, we always talk about inclusivity until it's time to actually be inclusive. Everyone deserves the right to have a platform, no matter what you take, what medications you take, what gear you wear. If you want to walk out your squat, if you don't want to walk out your squat, if you want your heels down on the bench, if you want your heels up on the bench, if you want to pull on a deadlift bar, does it really matter that much for 99% of people? And if you want to be like, those records don't, whatever. That's not the point, guys. Powerlifting is an outlet for personal growth. Powerlifting is also a sport. I do believe things like the IPF, it's the most organized, and if you want to, and that's probably the most prestigious title you could say as far as world champion. One of the things that does grind my gears is when people say I have a world record, but really what they're saying is I have a federation record. They don't have a world record, because unless you're an all-time record holder, you're more than likely not best in the world. You might be the best in the world in that federation, but if there's like 100 federations, it doesn't really hold the same weight, right? An IPF champion, it does hold a lot of weight. The competition is fierce, the standard is high, and I'm all for it. But not at the expense of the local lifter, not at the expense of the lifter that just wants to he wants to use a banded bench shirt because his shoulder's all jacked up. Not for the lifter that needs medical HRT, and then we're going to take a platform away from him or her. Not about the lifter that's financially constrained, and they all they have is a Velcro belt, and maybe they have inter knee sleeves, and they can't afford them a pair of knee sleeves. So that's the dangers of only supported tested powerlifting. And what I would propose, if people play nice, because together we could achieve more. Together we could achieve more. There's a place for everyone. But if the monolith meets die, if the equipped lift meets die, if the untested meets die, it's going to hurt the sport. And it may not hurt you now, but it's going to hurt you and it's going to hurt the community later. So I caution you to who you vote with your dollars. Don't just vote for what's popular. Don't just vote. Look at the people that have been around for 10 to 20 years. And I understand, yes, I could evolve. I could change my mind. But again, guys, I've been in this longer than you. I've seen people come and go. I've seen gyms fail. I've seen federations fail. I've seen meet directors fail. I have never quit, tatted on my back. I'm not going anywhere, whether you like it or not. And at the end of the day, whether you believe me or not, I'm going to continue to give you evidence that I am here for the community's best interests. I am here for the long haul. That's what Powerlifting with the People is all about. I've helped people at the highest level, but at the end of the day, I want to get more people involved in the sport because powerlifting has done so much for me, and I know it'll do so much for you. So please support local powerlifting. Please support your local gyms. Please support the people that support you. And that's not always the most popular fed. It's not always the most popular meat. So take a look in the mirror, think about who you're supporting. And again, it's not to say like we could support everybody. There should be a place for everyone. So anyways, I'll just leave it at that. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you guys enjoyed the podcast, please share it. Please give it a 5-star review. Thank you so much. Until next time, stay strong and we'll see you soon.